Yes, 6 knots.
What speed are we doing?
Just over 30 knots at the moment.
30 knots?
Yes.
Well, I've always been a bit of a risk taker. Actually, it turns out that we're not taking that much of a risk. There is a speed limit here in Poole Harbour, but there is special dispensation for these spectacular Sunseeker boats, which are made on a nearby dock. They have their own test run, and if your boat costs, well, £750,000 and 99% of them are exported, you are a bit of a special case. Here in Poole, on the Dorset coast, they have the largest natural harbour in Europe. By some calculations, it is even considered to be the biggest in the whole world. It is shallow, but it certainly is quite enormous. With the naked eye, you can't possibly see from one end of it to another. There is a total shoreline of just over 100 miles, and that's not even counting the many islands in the harbour. When I first came here, over 20 years ago, I was appearing in Bournemouth, and I thought Poole was just part of Bournemouth, you know, the western part. How wrong can you be? I mean, Bournemouth's only 100 years old. Poole has such a long history, and it hates being regarded as a poor relation. Every year it welcomes thousands of tourists, but it doesn't go in for the kiss-me-quick image. They're very careful about that. You might not have thought it was possible, but it is even more sedate than its next-door neighbour. The tradition here in Poole is more genteel, more leisurely, more often based on natural attractions than man-made entertainments.
Are you ready? Go! Come on, get your legs up, get your feet out of the water, get your feet high, come on! Sprint, 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 come on! Come on, sprint! Go on, girls, well done, keep going.
As we shall see, everything has its place in Poole. The beaches are some way from the centre of town. There is a 3-mile stretch along the spit of land which forms part of the eastern edge of the harbour, sandbanks. This is strictly supervised and fussed over, and not just by middle-aged fuddy-duddies. There is a lot of help from, well, not so much the bill, more your Baywatch. European community rules apply to our beaches now, and they are strict about the safety precautions provided on them. These young lifeguards are keen as mustard.
Really big circles. Up. Right, now down the left-hand side of the leg.
Oh, left.
Not joining in on this one?
I'm not joining in this one. No. You're nice and warm now. Let's go for it. This is totally voluntary. Cornwall's the only place where they get paid. They employ lifeguards, but here it's totally voluntary contributions, and I think they do a fantastic job. Wonderful.
All down.
I'm moving them, lads.
Heads up. Heads down. Go. Go on,
They certainly keep fit. They might even be just slightly fitter than me. And they've got all the gear. Borough of Poole Leisure and Recreation Services Beach Services Officers, Jim Ross. It's nice to meet you, Jim.
Nice to meet you.
And you are the beach officer?
Yes, indeed.
What is your job, actually?
My job is to make sure that everybody who comes down to the beach has a safe, good time down on the beach.
And you've worked all over the world, I hear. Where have you
I've worked
worked?
in many places. Well, I've worked mainly in Aden, Africa, and that was in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania.
Did you choose this outfit, or did you just see Out of Africa and say, that's what I want to look like on the beach?
This is the way I worked in Africa for many, many years.
I see.
And when we came down here, we decided that the beach should be a leisure and recreation place.
Absolutely.
And hence we end up as leisure and recreation.
I see. Yes, well, I've watched the lifeguards at work, and I think I'd feel safe with my children here as well.
Lovely. I'm pleased to hear it. Poole is Britain's best-kept secret.
I think so too, because when I first went to Bournemouth, I didn't even know Poole existed.
Well, I'm sure about that, but you know the old saying?
What's that?
That the best parts of Bournemouth are in Poole.
That's what they say. But if you live in Poole, it doesn't seem to be a secret to the water sporters. Jet skiing is the latest craze, but the harbour is also intensively used for water skiing, canoeing, power boating, windsurfing, and scuba diving. And these must all take their place amongst the thousands of more traditional sailing craft. It was getting rather out of hand, and so in 1994, the harbour master had to introduce firm measures, starting with that speed limit, which was not all that popular.
Recreationalists have been able to proceed from wherever in the harbour to sea without any restrictions at all. And whereas now it may take them 3 times as long to get to sea than it did before, and this becomes a problem for a lot of them. They have a high-powered boat which can do 30, maybe 40 knots, and they wish to go that speed. Unfortunately, other harbour users, and the Harbour Authority in particular, are not happy with craft proceeding at that speed within the narrow channels within the harbour, and something had to be done before we had serious accidents.
And what is more, there is now strict control of what you can do where. Each water sport is confined to a designated area in the harbour.
There is only one main deep water channel through the port, and that deep water channel has to take the largest ro-ro ferry, which is 21,000 tonnes, down to the smallest rowing boat and canoe. And unfortunately, because that channel is beautifully marked and has to be for the ships to get in, the recreationists tend to use it all the time rather than use a secondary channel. They have a right to use it, but the mix and match of a huge great ship and lots of recreationists, from yachts to dinghies to rowing boats to water skiers to jet skiers, creates a problem. Jet scooting is the largest problem that we have. They're there to enjoy themselves, and we understand that. And unfortunately, they're quite antisocial because of the noise. The recreationists have a right to recreate, but in fact, they don't have a God-given right to spoil everyone else's lives. So we had to try and find an area in the middle of the harbour which was far enough away for the noise to be deadened. Board sailing is another sport which has been on the scene now since the late 70s. It hasn't been frowned upon until more recently, when the board sailors have been using the main channels of the harbour as a racetrack. And I think you've probably seen board sailors at sea charging at great speeds when the wind is right. And they were using our main navigable channel as an area where they could try to see where they can go 20 knots plus. And this clearly had to be stopped, because we have had a board sailor fall off right under the bows of a ferry coming in, and the ferry had to do an emergency full astern, and how the man ever got away with his life, we don't know.
Golden beaches, water sports of all kinds, boats of all shapes and sizes. Oh, no problem with the daylight hours then, provided you obey the rules. But what about the nightlife? Poole has an art centre which has a 600-seater theatre, it has a concert hall and a cinema. But is it enough? Is it enough to keep people here in the evenings as well as seeing the boats during the daytime? I've played here and I have found that people tend to go into Bournemouth for their entertainment instead of staying here in Poole. Well, what could Poole do about it? Let's go and ask someone. I would like to see it like Saint-Tropez, with wonderful shops and wonderful places to eat and little bistros, so that it would entice people to go to some nice bars and things like that. You should try and keep people here.
OK, well, have you visited Poole Quay?
Yes.
The actual quay side?
Yes.
Well, there are many pubs along the quay.
Yes.
Which go back a long way.
But I would like to see it a bit more jazzy.
Yeah.
Like here on the front here, you've got this wonderful 3-mile stretch. Now, when you talk about Venice Beach and Los Angeles, everything goes on there. And I think like a Muscle Beach would be good on on the beach here.
It's
The
been
volleyball,
discussed.
netball, and selling T-shirts about Poole, everything about Poole. I think that would make it exciting for young people. I think you've got to try and entice young people as well as your middle-aged residents, which complain about everything, I'm told.
I agree with you about enticing young people, and certainly there are areas for young people to go, and I can show you that more fully.
Yes.
But certainly here on this beach, the very charm of it is the fact that it is natural.
Yes.
It is now the best beach in Britain, and we have an award to say that.
Yes, I know.
We've won the Blue Flag Award
Yes.
ever since its inception. But it is the natural environment that has the great appeal about sandbanks. We don't want to be Blackpool. We don't want donkeys, and we don't want candy floss.
No, but no, I agree with you there. And the cleanliness of the place is so wonderful, and you want to keep it.
It's something we're very proud of.
Absolutely. But there must be, I know poor people have said to me, if only we can keep people here at night, you know,
Yes.
it dies at night.
You haven't been to Tower Park.
Tower Park?
Tower
Where's
Park.
that?
This complex, which is within our borough, it's not in Bournemouth, it's within Poole, but it's not in the town centre. There we do have one of the biggest nightclubs on the south coast.
I didn't know that.
We've got a
Lynn.
10-screen cinema. We've got ice tracks, which is indoor skating, obviously, and splashdown.
I did a summer season on the pier in Bournemouth, and I didn't bring my family down because I thought there was nowhere for them to go.
You should have given us a ring.
Of course, Poole has a completely different history from Bournemouth, which grew into a resort only with the coming of the railways just over a century ago. Poole, by contrast, has a very long history. This is a full-size museum replica of an oak log boat dating from about the 3rd century BC. The size and shape of it have been calculated from substantial remains dredged from Poole Harbour 30 years ago. So Poolers have been messing about in boats for well over 2,000 years. The natural harbour made the town. Clay and wool exports were big business by the 15th century, and later on, trade with the New World brought even greater prosperity. In the 17th and 18th centuries, before big steamships, railways, and the Industrial Revolution, I think the thing to be was a merchant in a great English port. There was real money to be made shipping things in and shipping things out. Poole's maritime merchants specialised in trade with Newfoundland, as the museum shows, importing fish, whale oils, seal skins and furs. They didn't have our scruples in those days. Today, the commercial side of the port is very different, but still of considerable importance to the town. Apart from the ferries, 50 ships a week visit the port on average, bringing in steel and timber, building and agricultural products, and exporting clay and cereals, industrial and general cargo. These commercial activities put even more pressure on the harbour, but they bring in vital cash.
It's a question of balancing your services and your costs to provide a service. But we are in competition with other people, and our price has to be right for them to stay here, that's for sure. The fact that we have commercial operations enables the Harbour Authority, under their trust status, to put money into the harbour to provide the channels and provide the buoys. The balancing act is very much commercialism is helping with the facilities. The facilities may then be used by all, including the recreationists, who at this moment have mooring facilities in the harbour at reasonable rates.
All successful ports enjoy the romance of faraway places and the mystique of exotic cargoes. It's the name of their game. But even away from the port, Poole provides some spectacular examples of highly glamorous exports. Not all that far from the quay, but firmly on dry land, I discovered yet another well-kept secret. Would you believe that all Indy cars, the American equivalents of our Formula One racing cars, are built in England, and that the champion one is designed and built right here in Poole?
Headed for corner number 1, and Paul Tracy zooms around the high side of Nigel Mansell.
Apart from winning the Indianapolis 500, we're first, second and third in the championship this year, and we've won 11 out of 14 races. It's been a quite outstanding year for the company.
It's absolutely incredible. But what I'd like to know is why are the Indy cars made here in Poole in England? Why are they made here and not in America?
Well, one of the very good reasons is we have a remarkable workforce here, and there's a lot of people that are associated with us directly and indirectly. But fundamentally, we started here in 1974 to do Formula One. There were 6 of us in those days. There's 82 of us now, and we've no reason to move away from here because it's been such a wonderful place to operate from.
We have the best technicians, really.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, when you ship this to America, when you ship one of these, are they in parts or is it in one piece?
We used to send them in kit form, but now we send the cars complete and ready to go. And
we off the plane and they're ready to...
Absolutely. Normally within about half a day of the team receiving the car, once the final piece of electronics have been attached, the car is ready to test.
And I believe if anything goes wrong or a breakdown in America, it's sent back to England to be repaired.
If that's indeed is true, if there is a major accident to the car and the chassis needs to be repaired or the bodywork, it's shipped back immediately by the team.
Did you join this family because you are a racing enthusiast? Did you love it, or...?
Oh, I've never done anything else but.
Really?
For 30 years.
Paul Tracy on your screen. He is the race leader. He's got about a second lead on fellow countryman Scott Goodyear.
What is the most important thing, the car or the safety for the driver?
They go hand in hand. You need the speed first of all.
The speed first of all.
A race car has to be fast.
Yes. Can a driver, is a driver allowed to put any input in, say, look, when I did this, can you try this or can you try that? Is there anything like that a driver can help?
Yeah, a driver has a very large input. We have 3 race drivers. We try and tailor the car around their needs, how they drive, their seating position, their braking. They're the ones that control the car. The car has to fit them.
Yes, absolutely. So it's like tailor-made.
It has to be tailor-made, yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
And does their weight have any a lot to do with what?
Yeah, we try and keep them light.
Do you? Like jockeys?
We try and keep them light. You know, a car will accelerate faster if it's lighter.
Of course.
So we try and keep our car down to the weight limit, and we like a driver.
I hear you're working with the great Emerson Fittipaldi.
Yes, that's been interesting this year.
I must be. And do you go back and forth to America?
Back and forth for every race.
Well, every time he races, you have to be there?
Yes, I do, yes.
Motor racing costs an absolute fortune and relies on sponsorship to pay the bills. These boats, well, they just cost an absolute fortune, and buyers have to pay their own bills. Some 400 people work in this quayside factory, making about 50 vessels a year. So there must be quite a few fabulously wealthy people still left in the world after all. Bob, I have to say, when I audition dancers, I look for the line. When I look at boats, I look for the line. And I have to say, the Sunseeker line has to be one of the most beautiful boats I've ever seen.
That's nice of you to say.
I really... How did it all start? Where did it all start with?
Well, 27 years ago, we had a tin shed in the corner. Tin shed.
Here?
Yes.
In Poole?
In Poole.
Yes.
And we were servicing with a family business, outboards and doing things, and we had to make a career for ourselves. My younger brother. So we always loved boats. Most beautiful boats were not built in this country.
No.
They were on the outside. If we wanted something nice, we had to import it.
Really?
Import it, yes. Either Scandinavian or American. So we decided we wanted to build something that was beautiful and British.
Yes.
And that's what we went out to do.
So who did the first design of
I believe we had what you would say a premonition. So John, John and I basically came up with the idea, but then we went in with Don Shedd, who is a fantastic yacht designer, and that's where it's all developed from.
And of course, practically all the boats are export, aren't they? 99%?
99%, yes.
Goes abroad.
Elsewhere in the world, yes.
And that's why 3 Queen's Award for Industry.
Yeah,
that is wonderful. And how much does one cost? I mean, how much?
You can start with a little Outlaw, which goes in the back of the Predator, but you can go up to 750,000.
And this is what Bob is referring to. The Outlaw stowed in the stern of the Predator, the baby in the boot.
Everybody wanted to take their toys with them. So what we decided that it had to become one. So in other words, you had your living accommodation, you went elsewhere in the world, but you had your speedboat with you.
It's downright decadent. I've been coming to Bournemouth and Poole for over 20 years. I didn't even know this existed. It would be wonderful to have a showroom, to come and visit, like one passes a car showroom and you look at the Rolls Royces. I would love to see your,
You know, often we've thought about a showroom, but this is our showroom. People love to see factory, they love to see production.
Absolutely. Now, can people come round and have a look?
People come to reception, we take them round, because children, they're very keen on our product. So we love to take them round, whether they can have one day or not.
Well, enough of things fast and furious for a while. It's time to head for quieter waters. The whole of Poole Harbour is an SSSI, a site of special scientific interest, as specified by the Department of the Environment. It's a nature reserve, in other words, and in addition to all the other restrictions we've heard about in much of the harbour, you have to keep the noise down. This island is no exception. I am deep in the southern quiet area now, and would you believe I'm approaching the largest onshore oil field in the entire country? It's part of the biggest well site in the whole of Western Europe, and all neatly tucked away on the tiny island of Fursey. It's able to operate at all, let alone in this quiet zone, because the oil company had to listen to some of the loudest protests ever heard in the south of England. It has produced the most discreet oil rigs anywhere in the world. It was obviously well worth it, though. There's an awful lot of oil here.
Well, this island, we produce about 25,000 barrels a day. Turn that into gallons.
25,000 barrels a day.
That's about 1 million gallons a day is exported from this island every day of the year. What you're seeing here is the top end of the well,
yes,
which is the little tube that goes down into the earth about a mile down,
yeah,
and we take the oil up from there.
And what is fascinating, the way you've done it, is no piece of machinery is higher than the trees. So if you're seeing Fursey Island from the land, you would never know that there was an oil rig on this island. And you had to do that as part of the law, isn't it? SSI, isn't it?
Well, this is a very sensitive environmental area.
Yes,
what we had
exactly
to do was sit down with Dorset County Council, yeah, and all the local authorities and all the local environmental groups, yeah, and kind of come up with the best way of minimising the intrusion. Yeah. One of the things, as you say, is to make sure everything's down below the tree line.
I hear there's a lot of oil in Poole Bay itself.
About a third of the reservoir actually lies out in the bay, and we had to develop a very novel technique to do that.
Way out in Poole Bay, opposite Bournemouth, there were tremendous objections, as you might imagine, to an offshore oil rig. So a new technology just had to be developed. Flexible tubing, like a bendy straw, goes down from here and across the bay, and electric pumps suck the oil back to Fursey. I have felt that pump, and if you touch that, it comes up from the ground hot. So when you touch that pipe is as hot as a bath, which is unbelievable. I can believe it.
150 degrees, the temperature.
And that's how it comes out.
To the surface.
That's right. I noticed the colour all the way around. It's painted sort of like donkey brown. Is it because it's a nodding donkey? It's like what I call a donkey brown.
No, it's a much more artistic name now. It's actually called Van Dyke Brown.
Van Dyke Brown.
And it was selected after quite a long process, yeah, of trying to find the right colour to blend in everything that we do here. So make sure there's no glare, make sure that if you can see anything at all through the trees, it's at a colour which is recessive.
What's like camouflage type?
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes.
I understand. Certainly, the exotic Fursey wildlife seems to have no objections to living side by side with the oil installations. BP's activities are the larger-than-life example of the care and protection of resources that is going on in Poole. And Poole itself has shown a lot of toughness in facing up to difficulties where tremendous conflicts of interest collide. If it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. Here it must be jet skis, there it must be scuba diving. You can bring your lucrative cargo, but you must not disturb the birds. Oil rigs, yes. Visible from the mainland, no. It's all a huge juggling act. Precious natural habitats versus the income which pays the wages. Balancing the needs of the people and protection of the environment. Poole's rigid zoning experiments are very recent, but they seem to be working so far. Not too many tantrums or complaints. It's an interesting model of the problems we can all face one way or another, wherever we live. Now I must get back. If you would be so kind.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does Nigel Mansell have one of these?
He's actually got 2.
2?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll have 3, and one with a baby in the boot.
No problem at all.
If you don't mind. And I suppose the wife had better have one. Oh, then there's the kids, of course. Oh, and then there's my dog, Eric. He likes boats.